I don't know how people can have a spiritual practice without being something to do with nature. Whether you're in nature, you're thinking about it, consuming something that nature made, there is no spiritual practice of benefit that doesn't have some connection to nature. And I'm not just talking about doing your OMS and meditation and whatever else. A spiritual practice for a family might be taking their kids to a farm.
Hello, everybody. I would like to welcome Charlie Arnott to the Project Vitality podcast. I personally met Charlie and Hamish at a biodynamic workshop up in Noosa quite some time ago now. And I was really, really fascinated with his knowledge and his wisdom, and also because he came from a conventional background. So he wasn't always kind of weird and a hippie like me. He kind of came from that conventional place and has really turned his family farm around, and now is a passionate educator on regenerative farming and really one of the leading experts in that movement across Australia and across the world. So I'm very, very pleased to have you on the podcast, and excited to share your stories and your wisdom and have a bit of a laugh on the way.
Nick, thanks for inviting me along, thinking that was a good idea. And thank you for that glowing intro. I have to the caveat around all that is that I'm really, as they say, standing on the shoulders of giants, I suspect. And a lot of the heavy lifting's already been done by many people who came before me and are currently still very active in the space. And I am by no means, I don't feel like I'm an expert in anything, really. I know you had to do a few things well. I'm happy to take your accolades. It's very humbling.
Awesome, mate. Well, I think you were definitely a very great storyteller, and storytellers are what's needed in sharing the wisdom, because sometimes you can know a lot, but to really portray the story, giving that story of hope and giving that kind of story of your background is something that I think really kind of, makes you shine. And that's what I really noticed about you, that passion kind of lives deep within you. So to get started, I'd really love for the audience that don't know you or may not have heard of you, just tell us a little bit about your background, where you've come from, why you've shifted to learning about regenerative and biodynamics, and what was there a pivotal moment that made you shift from one way to another?
I grew up here at Boorowa. I'm currently in our homestead at Hanamino at Boorowa, where I grew up, and I'm an 8th generational Australian farmer. I hope I'm right in saying that. I did some rough maths on that many years ago. My mother's family came out of the Second Fleet, and they sort of ended up out of Western Sydney farming, and they've been farming in the UK before that, Scotland. So I guess it's in my genes. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, to be honest, in terms of what legacies or what baggage we bring with us. So grew up here, mixed farm at Boorowa, did lots of things, lots of sheep, lots of cattle, cropping, cut hay, different trading, stock enterprises, very complex. Not complicated. Maybe it was a bit of complication. It was certainly complex. Mixed farming operation here at Boorowa. And I went to school, did my uni stuff and did a few other things. And I ended up back here at the age of, I'm going to say 4, 5, 6, 7, 25. 25 I probably came home. And for a number of reasons, I took over management, and I essentially managed it the way I had experienced it as my father had for many years, conventionally. So what does that look like? It means a lot of inputs, a lot of chemical inputs. In those days, I'd hazard to say there weren't as many chemical inputs as there is now. Maybe animal health was similar, but in terms of cropping and things, there's probably a lot more in a 12-month cycle now. I would suggest that could relate to weed resistance to chemicals. There's just more variety, more selective herbicides and things that can be used. So, but we still used a fair bit of it back then, and we were doing a pretty good job. In terms of the KPIs or the benchmarks of the day, good prices for wheat, good prices for lambs, good wool, good quantity sort of figures, and quality was pretty good too. But along the way, but really busy. Anyway, along the way through my management, I kind of got to a point where I guess I was questioning did I want to be doing this forever? I want to be spraying stuff all the time and applying chemicals and artificial this and that. And I guess I didn't realise at the time, but on reflection, I was probably got sick of waking up every morning to kill stuff. That was a big thing, that was part of my job. And so there was some financial pressure, there was some environmental pressure, being a millennial drought. There was probably mental health pressure, not that I would have probably admitted or thought of it at the time. I definitely started questioning my behaviour, and then questioned, probably realised that it was probably not in line with my values. I valued nature, I valued family and people, and some environmental sort of indicators and factors and variables. But I thought, along the way there, that some of the indicators weren't very good. Like I saw blowing away in drought, and I had bare ground, and I had cattle on a gistment, and I was feeding stock all year long, parts of the year. So I essentially started questioning my activities, my behaviour, the paradigms I had. I didn't even know what the word paradigm meant back then. I just stuff you did as a child and as a young manager, and what Dad showed me and what everyone else did. So there was some tension events along the way, which sort of got me to ask better questions, and I did some courses. RCS Australia put on a number of courses I went to, Raising for Profit being the main one that really was a catalyst for me meeting a whole lot of different people who are having similar kind of, epiphanies or challenges. I continued educating with them or getting educated by them. And so I guess I fell into a community that were trying to do things differently. There were sheep, there were cattle people, there were croppers, there was all sorts, but there was a common goal, I guess, to challenge the status quo. For me, what did that mean? It was, challenging what I've learned. You spent 4 years at university learning. I did rural science at UNE, Armidale in New South Wales, and very conventional science. I was very challenged when I had to apply that here and align that with behaviour and values. And so I questioned that. I questioned, what I'd been doing for quite a few years. I questioned what Dad had been doing. The interesting thing or the challenging thing about changing your business or your behaviours or activities or practices, essentially changing your principles about farming in this case, is you're also challenging or changing. You reflect on what you used to do and what your family used to do. One of the challenging things about that is that you could potentially be making the teachers of what you used to do wrong. In this case, my father. And so that's not what I did. I didn't say, oh, Jesus, I wish Dad hadn't taught me all this crap and made me spray this and do all this stuff that I now don't do or don't like doing. It was more that that's what I knew then and that's what he knew then. And that's my own journey, through my own journey, not his. I just developed a different way of thinking. But it was supported by a lot of education, a lot of different people. And it's, what we did was no silver bullet either. Like, I'll make a point of saying that just because you adopt regenerative agriculture practices which may encompass grazing and types of animals or the way you manage them or move them or the cropping you do or don't do anymore or things, it's no silver bullet. You still have to apply sound business principles. You still have to pay the bills. You still have to manage cash flow. You still have to, sell stuff. You still have to produce things. It's just that your attitude to it and how you do it and where you sell it and how you sell it and your community you are then part of, that's the bit that changes, and that for me was very positive. I mean, I did make some terrible mistakes, applying new practices and tools that I was unfamiliar with, like I went cold turkey. I pretty much on a day stopped using everything that I had been previously doing. That was, urea on crops and spraying thistles out of lucerne and drenching animals and everything. And I wouldn't suggest anyone do that. It was a really silly thing I did. But I guess I was just feeling so empowered and so excited by this new way of doing things that felt very positive. But again, if anyone's thinking of changing their farming to be more regenerative, I would say do it slowly, and maybe slowly is not the right word. Do it in a very considered way. I think the first thing to do is just to sort of look at your visions and goals, which is I never had visions and goals for my business back when I was doing conventional farming. I wasn't taught that. It's not something you're taught at uni or school. And just being really clear on what you want out of life, For some people, it's even, do I want to be a farmer?
No.
I know a lot of people who have started on the regenerative farming course, and not because of the practices they adopted, but because of the investigations and the questions they asked of themselves. For the first time, they actually stopped thinking that I'm just a farmer and that's what Dad did and however many generations ago. They got out of that sort of job description or that paradigm. That's what they do, and someone asks you to put together your vision, your goals, your life plan, vision board, whatever you want to call it. I know plenty of people who got to that point and did those exercises and really went, oh my God, I actually don't know whether I want to be a farmer, which is a really interesting place for someone to get to, who started a journey not that long before probably down that track. But I think that's a really positive thing. It's a really positive thing if anyone has questioned. They get to a point where they have to make a decision, like, is this really what I want to do? And quite a few people I know, sold their farm and they went and, bought a landscaping business. Something totally different, So I'm getting a little bit away from the top of your question there, Nick, but I guess in terms of, that's my journey, but it's also the journey of a lot of other people in regenerative farming. I know a lot of people who are really challenged by their behaviour, and that's pretty much the biggest catalyst that people can have, And so my story, I'll conclude answering your question, is my story is not dissimilar to many, many people. Different details, of course, and timeframes, but it seems to be a bit of a theme. People have some tension events. They have some challenging times, some challenging experiences, and unfortunately, that's often the way that people get to a point of having a change is through pain.
Yeah, definitely. That's my personal journey, is through pain as well. That's what shifted me, and pretty much everyone I know that's people call it an awakening or whatever it is, something that shifts your paradigm. It's generally through like a loss of somebody they love, an illness, an injury, some type of financial crisis, relationship breakdown, something major kind of happens to shock you and kind of get you to reflect on your life, because we get busy and we just do what we do because we've always done what we do and we never really question it. And then something like this, comes right in our face, and we have to kind of sit with our pain and everything that we've kind of suppressed, and then make that decision moving forward. And you touched on a couple of really good things that I wanted to talk about. Is I noticed this through permaculture and learning about farming and environmentalism and all this type of stuff, that sometimes we have this ideal picture of the way things should be done. And we get an idea and like, this is the way things should be done. And you kind of said with your dad taught you so much. And you didn't want to demonize him because now you've changed your ideas or there's more information that's been brought in. And that's one thing that you kind of see a lot in the world is people blame farming for all their problems. But at the same time, they're very happy to eat the food that's provided by the farmers. And so I can understand what they talk about with the problems like the way farming is done. But as you said, it takes time to shift and change things. And I do see there's a bit of an acceleration in change. There's a lot of small scale farmers like myself that's really wanting to get out there and are passionate about it. And people like me that grew up in a city, so had no farming background whatsoever, and have just decided that I want to be on the land, and I'm learning a lot. And one of the biggest lessons that I kind of learned is I moved thinking I knew everything. And then I realized that the people were the farmers, the kind of old school farmers, the original farmers. I learned so many lessons and I was so humbled so many times because I had read things, but when I tried to apply things, every situation is different and some things don't apply the way that it says in a textbook, or that idea doesn't actually land into reality. And yeah, I think that was really good what you said about your dad, that he taught you so much and now you're applying new things, but we don't want to just demonize all farmers because of the way the industry has been and has shifted over the years, and kind of move more into that excitement of what can we make this? How do we do this? And the more people that are kind of drawn in from a positive aspect and are also open to learning from existing farmers and generational farmers, I think it is a really exciting space because, the amount that I've learned in a very short time has been from the farmers that are around. And the one thing I've noticed is they're very kind of like yourself. You don't like you talk yourself up. Oh, yeah, I know a little bit. But the truth is you guys actually know a lot. And that wisdom is so kind of sought out now. And yeah, I just think that's a really exciting time to get into farming.
I think it is exciting. Yeah, I'm very careful not to demonise, and I probably used to. And then I guess, dare I say, matured a bit more and kind of got a bit of a handle on things. I'm very careful not to demonise conventional farmers and make them wrong and I'm right. Like, I used to be a conventional farmer. I just don't do that anymore. I don't agree with a lot of those practices, and I kind of can see down the track where that's heading and so on. Having said that, though, I don't. Everyone's got their own motivations and choices and resources and decisions to make and budgets and whatever else. It's their choice to make. And I think, in addition to that, whether you're transitioning from conventional to regenerative, or in your case, going from non-farming to farming, the really important element of that to remember is it's about adaptation, not adoption. Like, you may know farmers are conventional farmers and they've got some great ideas, and they have wonderful ideas. And you're best to adapt some of their ideas, maybe not all their ideas, because their farm is, even though it might be next door, it's going to be a bit different. You got different values, different resources and so on. So the concept of adaptation, not adoption, I think is really important to remember. And what does that mean? It means that you're not going to get a prescription. You're not going to get the formula, because you can get the formula and try to apply it, and you might be lucky that it might work, but in most cases, it's not a formula. It's about, okay, I get what they're doing, but I've got to apply that to this soil type, this weather, this aspect, this, I don't know, again, your values and resources and your budgets and so on. So nothing's easy when you're changing your business and your lifestyle and your life and, your career. But no, I commend anyone who wants to get on board, give it a shot. It isn't all beer and Skittles. It's not like the silver bullet. It is a lot of work, but it's very rewarding. It's growing food to feed people, and you're going to contribute to them in a very positive way is a very rewarding thing, as long as you can make money out of it too. And you're not sort of serving them so much that you're going out the door backwards. So it's important to remember that you've got to make sure you feed yourself first, and feed yourself nutritionally, but also your business, your cash flow, and those sort of things. So, but it's exciting. People. I like the idea, not just like the idea. I think it's really important that economies are based on demand-based economies, which ours is not. Ours is a supply-based economy, essentially, where people produce stuff, especially in farming. They produce stuff and they hope that at the end of that thing's life, or that's the season or whatever, they can sell it. Some people are using forward contracts, and there's other ways. It's not that simple, but if you can work in an economy, in an industry where it's based on demand, then you know where that's going to go. You know that's going to get sold. You know the price you can actually ask for it. And I think that's, we're heading into that space with regenerative farming or regeneratively grown products where people are wanting it. They want that sort of food. As I've said before, people are not walking into grocery stores saying, can I have more of that GMO corn? Or that sprayed lettuce. They want organic, they want biodynamic, they want regenerative, they want clean, chemical-free. That's really encouraging, and it's so much more than just, I'm going to buy my fruit and veggies from a regenerative farmer or, a grocery store or a farmer's market. Often the complaint is it costs too much. Well, I'd say to those people, well, yes, in isolation, it probably does cost a bit more, and fair enough too. A lot of work's gone into that food. That's much more nutritionally dense than the other crap you might buy at a supermarket. But look at the rest of your shopping trolley. Look at the way you shop. Don't spend most of your time in the centre aisles of a supermarket if you want to shop there. Like, just cut processed food out of your diet. You'll slash a huge amount off your bill, off your grocery bill, and then you can afford, essentially, better afford to buy the food that's going to be better for your family and you. So yes, it's a good time, Nick, I think, for people to get into this sort of farming space, and it's a good time for eaters to be supporting them do it, whether it's transitioning farmers, whether it's new farmers, whether it's just even people moving to rural communities, that not necessarily farming themselves, but they support in some way those farmers that are doing things more regeneratively.
Yeah, I think the big shift comes from, so my background is health, and the shift comes from people are unhealthy and they're unhappy, and the dots are starting to go together that it's what I'm eating every single day that is causing this disease in my body. And it's taken a while for this to happen, but it really is starting to be kind of prominent in people's faces that I am what I eat. And so that is kind of driving this shift that I'm noticing is people have been putting off and they've been doing the other things. They might have been going to the gym and they're doing meditation classes and they're doing all of this. But then when they actually really look at what they're eating, that is the root cause of their disease and their problems. And so that's why they're shifting. And
you can't exercise your way out of a bed.
No, exactly. And that's the kind of, we've been going down that pathway for a while now, and it's kind of hit this crisis point where people are realizing that, oh, wow, I am eating genetically modified food. They've just changed the name to biofortified or whatever. And they're sneaking more and more additives and colors and they're, different sugars, but they're calling it other things. And even though it's got a health star review or it's got this, doesn't actually mean that it's real food. And I was speaking with Mark from Raw Farm in the USA, and he was saying that what's happening is people are starting with like the processors of the big powerhouses that kind of own the food industry, and consumers are starting to go direct to farmers because they want that quality, and they're supporting that small scale local farmer or butcher, and that's kind of where we're seeing the excitement in the demand is coming from the consumer, and it's kind of the consumers started to take responsibility for, well, the reason the food's shit is because we allowed it to be shit, and now I want something different, and my health is improving. And that was the biggest thing that happened to me with my health journey was when I went and saw a Czech practitioner, which is what I am today, is one of my parts of my program was go to the organic farmers markets. And I was lucky there was an organic farmers market 10 minutes away from me. And so every Sunday I'd go to the organic farmers market. I'd still go out partying the night before, but eventually it got to the point where I stopped partying and I changed my circles. But that positive change in my life came from starting to eat real food. And yes, I remember the price point at the beginning going, oh, wow, this is more expensive. However, what I noticed is I was eating less food because it was more nutritionally dense. And then I also started to notice that, okay, well, this is the choice, right? Do I go out and spend $50 or $100 on alcohol on a Saturday night? Or do I go to bed early and wake up and spend that extra $50 or $100 on good quality food? And at the beginning, I kind of went back and forth, kind of did a bit of both, but eventually got to the point where, you know what, this actually makes me feel better. I'm meeting some really great people and I'm feeling more aligned with who I am. And that's that kind of crisis point that we talked about, where you get to decide, okay, do I play over here or do I go play over here? And maybe be a bit different to my friend's circle and maybe value food more than this lifestyle. And then you get to see what happens. And then for me personally, and many people I know, our health started to improve dramatically. And so now, and then you get educated and you learn more and you get so you realize how much the food industry and as Czech practitioners, we call them non-food. So, you talked about the middle aisles of a supermarket. There's no food there. It's got no nutritional value whatsoever, most of it. And it takes life force from you. And when you start to kind of shift and start to go to, maybe it might start at the beginning to go on the outside of the supermarket and just go to the fresh stuff. Then it might be going to the organic section. Then it might be going to a farmer's market. Then it might be going like direct, like I order my beef direct from Michelina. And you start to get that relationship with your farmers. And what you start to notice is you see who's really passionate about what they do. And you kind of know, wow, these are the ones I want to get my food from.
Yeah, I mean, it's important, the connection and the value that people farming regeneratively, organically, biodynamically, whatever you want to call it, they're still selling the sizzle, not just the sausage. There's real value in knowing where it's from, and I think there's the next step from that is like, as you have done, you actually go to the farm and you get to know the farmers and you get to understand their principles, and that's very nurturing and very nutritious mentally and spiritually, as well as literally what you put down your throat. So, yeah, look, I can't agree more. I think that's one of the big missing links in society, especially for children. I mean, adults are adults and they can make their own minds up, and a lot of them are probably too far gone to kind of change their minds, unfortunately. However, it's the kids that I can't stop thinking about. They're buying and eating decisions for them by their parents, and sometimes their schools and so on. And so, the children who, if they can eat that sort of good quality food and also get to those farms and roll in that sheep shit and fall out of that tree and get in the yards and help move whatever farmers are happy for them to do, that's vital. It's critical for vitality. It's critical for physical development. It's critical for immune development. It's critical for nutrition. Zach Bush talks a lot about breathe your biome, and the epigenetic influence that the breathing the air that's been in the lungs of an eagle can have on you. Being in nature and being part of it, it's such a lovely thing. I don't know how people can have a spiritual practice without being something to do with nature. Whether you're in nature, you're thinking about it, even consuming something that nature made. I mean, there is no spiritual practice of benefit that doesn't have some connection to nature. And I'm not just talking about doing your OMS and meditation and whatever else. The spiritual practice for a family might be taking their kids to a farm. That's a great ritual. And what those parents are doing by doing that is normalising trips to the farm, normalising rolling in sheep shit, normalising and reinforcing their body's health, down the throat, in the lungs, in the eyes, in the ears, through the skin, through their experiences. That's how kids learn, and that's a great teacher of children and adults. It teaches boundaries. Don't touch that, it's sharp. It's going to bite you or it's going to sting. Don't climb right to the top of the tree because you're going to fall out. I mean, there's so many wonderful things that nature provides. I see my kids do stuff here in this garden, and I'm looking out the window now, and I know what I used to do behind that dam, and the things I used to do and play, and so on. My kids are doing the same thing. That's life-giving, not just in food. So, yeah, getting kids to farms, getting to know your farmer, it's absolutely invaluable. I bang on about asking people who their doctor is, and they always say, I've got a doctor, and how important is that doctor? Oh, very important, They're doctors. Of course they're important. And you say, well, how often do you see them? Oh, every 3 to 6 months. And they're very important, and they know their name and so on. And they're very expensive generally to go see. And then I say, well, who's your farmer? And they go, what do you mean? You go, well, how many times have you got to eat a day? And they go, 3 times. And so why don't we have a farmer? We've got accountants and bankers and doctors. We should all have farmers. And case in point with you, Nick, you know Mitch and Nina well, and get meat from them. You've got a farmer. And as Joel, I love Joel Salatin's expression, you better pay the farmer now than the doctor later. I long for the day where that's a normal thing in most households.
Yeah, and I definitely am seeing that shifting is people are making that connection earlier rather than later. So they are realizing, okay, yeah, I'm going to invest. And it's not even spending. They're starting to realize, well, I'm going to invest in my health now so I don't have to see the doctors. And, in Australia, because we have Medicare and we have an almost free system, people kind of take advantage of that and kind of put their responsibility for their health to their doctor. But what's happening is people are starting to realize that I've given that away and I am suffering along this lifetime. And you get that one life, and it's not, the statistics are that we live longer, which the truth is most people are pretty much dead in their 50s because their body is not capable of doing all the things that they actually love to do. And so, we're kind of walking around, there's zombie movies, but if you actually look around, it is actually pretty zombified. People can't do what they love, and they're not really thinking for themselves. And they've kind of lost that playfulness, vitality that you see kids have when they're playing on a farm or with their group of friends. And that's quite sad to see, but at the same time I'm also seeing that shift that's happening, that people are wanting that and they're craving that, and they're moving back to rural communities, like you said. It's no secret that doTERRA has had a huge positive impact on my life, specifically around my mental health and my immune system. I've been doing this business now for 10 years, and I can ship these products to anyone, anywhere in the world within 7 days. So if you're needing a good night's sleep, reducing your stress, if you're feeling anxious, overwhelmed, need some immune support, digestive support, metabolic health support, pretty much anything I can think of, these oils and doTERRA product range can support you. Now, I created a landing page. It's thathealthdude.com/doTERRA, or you can also reach out to me in the DMs and I can make a custom package specifically for your needs. There's two ways. Either become a customer, that's 90% of my business, or if you've got a wellness brand and a business, you can use doTERRA and me, the perks are you get me, as a fulfillment partner to really support and enhance the vitality of your customer base. Just go to thathealthdude.com/doTERRA or send me a message in any of my social platforms in a DM. And, they're kind of basing their foundation for life around health, and food is a major aspect of that. And, you notice it when you see people come on the land here and the kids, and they want to help you. Oh, can I help feed the animals, or can I help do this? And they're so excited. And, to me, it's not that an exciting job because you do it quite a lot. But to them, this is the greatest thing. And they're never bored. They're never really wanting to look at their iPad or their phone because, they want to pat the goats, or they want to see the dogs, or they want to climb the tree, whatever it is. Their kind of curiosity for life comes back when they're on the land.
It's so good to see. It's in their nature to want to be in nature because they're closer than anyone to their point of origin, the day of birth, and that's how they come out. And it's over time in situations where, unfortunately, parents aren't sort of privy to that or just don't give their kids that opportunity. And the older they are, the harder it is for them to really click back into that nature. But get them when they're young. It's never too late, really. But you're dead right. They just fall into it. It's the best. It's the best playground. Talking about vitality, it's interesting. Yesterday, I was in Sydney and I took my kids to Quantum Dentist, Dr. Jalal Khan, awesome guy in North Sydney. Anyway, Cole is one of his osteos he works with, and he did a bit of work on my boy Lordy, who's nearly 7, and he just did some muscle testing on him, and he said, "Wow, this bloke's vital. He's 80%." He's 80% of his 100% vitality, and he's going to do a few things that should lift him up to close to 100, not into the high 90s. But my point is, and Cole's point was, he said, most kids I see are 40. Most kids who come in here, they're 40% vital. And I'd like to know more, what his experiences are as to why. I've got my theories on that. Some of it's to do with food, I'm sure. Some of it's to do with immune function and their connection with nature. But it was just lovely to hear, and I kind of know why my boy is 80% without other things that Cole's going to do with him from an osteopathic sort of point of view and dentistry point of view. And I know why. It's because he's out there, he's rolling in the sheep shit, he's climbing trees, he's licking the dog's face. He's doing all these things that are just so vital for life. And so anything, if there's a message for any parents listening, it's probably just get out to a farm, get out to nature, even as a bloody national park. They're as good as any. Just don't get the kids rolling around the car park because they're probably sprayed glyphosate all over near the signs and on the bitumen.
Yeah.
But get them out there, and go camping and do these wonderful things, and they'll work out. But you don't need to teach them stuff in nature. Nature will do it for them and for you, really.
And then there's the point that you touched on about the spiritual connection, so breathing in the air that the eagle flew past. And I remember chatting with someone, and they were saying the most spiritual people, the potato farmers out in bloody, Idaho. And what I notice is more and more is the most spiritually connected people that I know are the farmers. And they don't talk about it. They don't even need to say the word spiritual because it's actually just a part of who they are. They don't even know all that stuff. It's just like, well, this is just the way things are. Like, I know when the wind blows that way, or I know when the rains are coming this way, or I know when the black cockatoos fly. You start to know, and you see these things, and it just becomes a part of your being. And because most people are so disconnected from that because they live in cities, and I've got my own opinion on cities and why they're designed and if they're even really functional for human health. And then when you start to see the people that are out in nature and they work at a slower pace, but they've got that resilience and that consistency, and they just keep going and going and going because they're just so, I guess, almost entrenched in their environment, because they realize, they just have this knowing that they are part of that environment. Whereas people that live in the city, they kind of have this yearning deep in their soul that this is not really right for me. And this is causing me stress. And this is causing me to feel overwhelmed and anxious. And the statistics show of how many people are on pharmaceuticals. It's like majority of the population and kids that are on these. Yeah, and that's the sad part, is it's the kids. Because the kids diagnosed with ADHD because you've got like a boy your age told to sit in a classroom all day and learn something that he's got no interest in whatsoever. But if he wants to run around and play and use all his energy and think or daydream or ponder, that they've got ADHD. And it's like the system itself is broken. And this is why you're seeing such a huge movement in, say, the homeschooling movement, and people wanting to go to nature-based schooling systems and nature-based education, or going camping, doing farm tours, all these type of things, because people are realizing that, we weren't born to just be inside all day in a box learning something that's not even really valuable in life. And yeah, it's pretty much.
A small example, somewhat of that, local primary school where my boy is, where I don't know how many kids there are diagnosed with ADHD or anything like that, but certainly I know that Zupa Dupas, those coloured icy
ice block things,
ice block things, summertime, kids, whether they're given them for doing things or they get it at the canteen or whatever else. I mean, the shit that's in those things, the colours and the God knows the chemicals and whatever else. I mean, no wonder they have trouble with kids not be able to pay attention in class in the afternoon after those horrible things. There's some basic stuff like that. And so, just a quick story about kids and ADHD and sort of functioning. Dr. Arnott Rubenstein, who I know and interviewed for my podcast some years ago, he did some work with some school or a facility up in Sunshine Coast, actually somewhere up your way. And the kids who were there were special needs, and it was ADHD or whatever. They were pretty needy to the kids, and from an education point of view and behavioural challenges, they basically had a kitchen garden that the kids tended, and they grew veggies in there. And so that was quite a thing for the kids to actually to be focused and concentrate long enough to be planting broccoli and tending to weeds and gardens and that sort of thing. So that was one part of the program. But the other part was that they'd pick them and they'd cook these things. Anyway, they had videos of the kids having picked them and cooking them and so on, and they showed the videos to these kids. It's only after a couple of weeks. And they showed the videos to the parents of these children, of the children eating what they'd grown. And the parents were like going, that's not my kid, he doesn't eat broccoli. Like he can't sit still long enough and he won't eat broccoli anyway. And there's his kids happily eating broccoli. And it just goes to show that, you don't necessarily need medication. You don't need pills. You don't need interventions to fix, and it never does fix. It only just hides and Band-Aids. Children with those sort of not disabilities and those challenges, and nature, teaching, focus, consequences, like don't go and stick the fork in your hand that you're supposed to be digging the veggies up with because it's going to hurt. So there's a whole lot of lessons, somewhat responsibility for growing this plant, getting it to the kitchen, the cooking, the sense of purpose. There's so many benefits to that sort of a program, and the Stephanie Alexander stuff's been fantastic. Kids growing food and cooking it in schools. So many other initiatives which are just so positive, and it's life-changing and life-saving stuff. These are kids with that foundational understanding and appreciation of nature, which they are so willing to be immersed in if given the opportunity. It's foundational stuff.
Mm. So I'd love for a kind of brief explanation from you of what the word regenerative farming, like what regenerative farming is and what biodynamics is. Because I know that there's a lot of people out there that are, these are buzzwords. And, you hear organic, you hear regenerative farming, you hear biodynamic. And it's like this is the direction that we're shifting because the benefits to the food are so profound and the benefits to the land are so profound that it's just the direction that we are going to go as a species because, to be honest, we actually need it to survive and to thrive. And if we don't go that path, we're going to go down a different path. So I guess for those people that maybe don't know what regenerative farming is, don't know what biodynamics is, or are interested in getting amongst it. Like I know that you run some courses that are all on your website. You've got one up in Sunny Coast.
16th and 17th of October.
Yeah.
Changing Abbott's Farm with Cindy O'Meara there at Maloney.
Yeah. So, So I'd love you to kind of explain what they kind of would say. For example, they would go to a course like you. You've also got your podcast as well, which is the regenerative farming. It's all about regenerative farming, regenerative journey. Yep. So I'd love if you could explain what regenerative farming means and biodynamics.
Yeah, cool. So look, regenerative farming, lots of definitions perhaps, and dare I say, some people are getting sick of the phrase because it's been used all over the place, and that's fine. I guess any practice, I've got two definitions, simple and a little more complex. Any practice or behaviour or philosophy or principle that builds the soil quality or quantity, the quantity or quality of soil, you're doing it. Whether it's the plants you're sowing in the ground or the manure, the composting you're doing or the way you're running your cattle, and if it's improving the quality and quantity of soil, you're doing something regeneratively. I actually like the word generative, generative farming, where you actually you're generative practices which aren't necessarily regenerating it to a point. You're actually blowing the lid off how far you can take this sort of stuff and how much food you can grow and how well you can do it. The other more complex definition is any, again, philosophy, practice and behaviour and so on that is increasing or improving one or more of the five basic landscape functions, and they are solar cycle, the biological cycle, the mineral cycle, the whole hydrological cycle. So you've got your sort of those four, and then the fifth one in that system is people, people managing that system. When any of those are being improved, better hydrological function in a landscape, whether it's better water infiltration, whether it's better solar capture, where there's more biology in the soil, whether you've got more mineral availability in the soil, whether you've got just healthier people in the landscape, that's a regenerative kind of a farm or a regenerative overlay. Biodynamics is not an alternative. It's actually, it's part of the tools. Like I'd say if you've got a regenerative farming toolbox, right, you have lots of different, you've got a toolbox, you've got different things that lift up and things that open up and drawers and shelves and whatever else. What you put in those, so you've got regenerative farming toolbox in there, you've got all your tools. You've got, biodynamics is a tool. It's a pretty broad, very powerful. So you've got natural sequence farming, you've got the way you graze your animals, in a managed grazing scenario, you might have your key line stuff, you might have composting as a practice, all sorts of tools you can use and you can have in this regenerative toolbox. Biodynamics for me, the way I explain it is it's the lining of each of those parts of the toolbox. If you add biodynamics to the use of any other tool, 1 + 1 will equal 3. It's essentially, so what is biodynamics? It's a way of connecting the cosmos to the earth via plants and the activity of plants, which enhances the biology of soil and essentially grows better food and improves the environment and anyone in it and anything in it. So what does that look like? Well, it's actually like compost and cow shit in a number of different forms. The one that most people are probably familiar with, Horn Manure 500, which is lactating cow manure. So a cow that's lactating at the time of collection of that shit, stuffed into a cow horn and put in the ground, so far into the ground over winter, over that 6-month period in the colder time of the year. That stuff, when you pull it out of the ground, you only need about 25, 50 grams a hectare spread on your land with water, diluted in water, and stirred and diluted to do its job. There's various other manure-based preparations, we call them. There's the set of compost preparations, which are essentially 6 herbs and plant materials that have been fermented and composted and enhanced and transformed within the different organs of animals, So you're getting the plant sort of kingdom and the animal kingdom together with the earthly realm, where these things essentially are made in the ground over 6 or 12 months. And then they are used in very small quantities to do not dissimilar things, to enhance the environment through spraying them in different ways in the landscape. There's lots of different other ways to use it. It's a way to be very resourceful with whatever products you've got. One of them, like you got a dead kangaroo on the side of the road. You probably remember this from our course there, Nick. You get a kangaroo, stick it in a drum, fill it up with water, put these 6 biodynamic compost preparations in there for 3 to 4 months. Don't put it near the house; it's going to smell. But keep the whole thing under the water, and then you'll have this amazing. It'll be a soup. It'll be one of the most nutritious fertilizers you can ever imagine. So there's so many different aspects to it. There's the physical kind of, I'm putting stuff on the land and spraying it out. You have to be very intentional. Also, that's one of the essential ingredients is your own intention, and your own attitude to what you're doing. So back to your question, regenerative agriculture is very broad. It involves many, many tools that you as a manager of land and business can choose to implement, in various ways and different sort of mixes of those tools. And biodynamics is a tool, a very effective tool. It could be used in anything. You're putting a natural sequence farming contour down, put some biodynamic compost on the top side of it, or the bottom side, on the bottom side. If you're doing permaculture, again, using compost in those situations for your trees or whatever, you do different sprays. When you're grazing, when the cattle have come out of a paddock, put some biodynamics out after the cattle have come out of that paddock. There's not one regenerative practice on this earth that you can't use biodynamics with to enhance the benefits of that practice.
Yeah, awesome. So I wanted to discuss the whole idea that cows farting and burping is destroying the world, and that we need less cows to save the planet, whereas my personal opinion is the reason we actually need a lot more cows, and we don't have as many wild bison and things like that used to roam the land. And, I know that this is quite a hot topic because it's kind of said that cows are using all the water, and they're using, we're having to clear rainforest to feed these cows, and they're using up all this. And I'd love to kind of understand your kind of thoughts and patternings about livestock and how they actually are a crucial part of humanity moving forward, and not just, as you said, regenerating the soil, generating that soil to that next level so that we can thrive as a species.
Okay, so big topic. Nowhere on the planet is there an environment or ecology where there's not animals in there contributing. It just doesn't happen. So for anyone to think that an environment that doesn't have animals in it is a good thing is crazy, and is shunning history basically, and millions of years of evolution. That being said, we can put aside a monoculture of a particular plant being a good thing, I think, So let's get to the history around bovines, ruminants and so on, which are, as you say, are being demonised as killing the planet. Now, if we just take, as an example, North America, where I think there was like 300 million bison, roaming the grasslands there. They basically made those grasslands through their grazing and migratory habits and produced some of the best soil in the world, the deepest soils in the world, and some of the most resilient landscapes and sort of ecosystems. So let's say 300 million of those are roaming around, and guess what? They were farting and burping. And they've been doing that for, I don't know, pick a number, millions of years, maybe, long time. So if they were contributing to the environment, CO2, they've been doing it for a long time as a natural system before us humans decided to burn coal or contribute in whatever way we're supposed to be contributing. So let's say 350 years ago, let's just fast forward to now, we have similar amounts of bovine farting and burping creatures in the North America, right? So we can probably safely say they're producing the same amount of gas from both ends. Most of it comes out the front, but a bit out of the gas, it's back.
Lighthouse is my signature 6 or 12-month one-on-one mentorship program. It's pretty much where I've gathered all my life experience as studying with the Czech Institute for 15 years, my intuitive gifts, my personal challenges, which I do not wish upon anybody, and to fast track you to where you want to go. And my approach is very simple. One, it's all about vitality and life force. Change takes a truck ton of energy, so you need that vitality and life force to ground you so that you're resilient when blockages come up, and they will. Two, we've got to get you clear, get that clarity on where you're going, because once you've got that little bit of life force back, you can start to dream bigger, that biggest vision for your life. And then three, it's all about confidence. Now, as a lighthouse, you may have weathered many a storm. You may feel battered, you may feel broken, you may feel defeated. But as we rebuild your confidence, you start to shine bright, and it helps to guide others home because they see that beacon of hope, that brightness of you sharing your truth, sharing the essence of who you are. And the truth is, the world really needs a lot of lighthouses right now because people are stuck, people are overwhelmed, and we need your brilliance, that light within inside you, to be shining so bright that people can spot you from a bloody mile away. Now, all you got to do is head on over to thathealthdude.com/lighthouse or send me a DM on any of my socials and we can chat and see if it works. I take on a few clients every year and let's see if we can make some magic happen.
So there's no net real change in the amount of methane that those ruminants in North America are contributing to the atmosphere. So why the hell are we worried about it, right? Why are we thinking that we should actually reduce those numbers of animals because they are killing the planet? Well, if they've been killing the planet, ruminants in North America have been doing that for millions of years. So I actually don't think that's the problem. There are ruminants all over the planet, right? And there is less biomass on the planet now than there was before. So I reckon, I'm happy to be challenged. I reckon it's fair to say there's less farting and burping going on in the world from ruminants than there was, again, let's just pick a number, 350 years ago, 1,000 years ago, whatever. So why we are so worried about trying to reduce the amount of methane into the atmosphere, I know why, because there's money in it. There's the people who are saying that the cows are bad. They're only talking about one-way methane, cycle. It's a cycle. And what is a cycle? It goes round. It continues and is looped. They have to say, the cows fart and burp, and it goes to the atmosphere, and it's adding to the greenhouse gases. It's such a small part of the environment, of the atmosphere, and the gases in the atmosphere. And there are methanobacter and all sorts of different sort of organisms that help break it down and within years, turning it into non-greenhouse gases and harmless elements. So there's a science side of it, which is pretty clear to me. Why are we worried about it? This is the twigs. Right? This is the stuff that doesn't really matter because it's a normal process. It's a cycle. It's been happening for millions of years. Yes, a proportion of animals and where they are and what they actually are, bison versus a domesticated, cow, bovine. Sure, that's changed over time. But I can't see how the methane that's actually coming out front and back ends of ruminants in the world is actually, they're producing more. So why are we worried about it? I think a lot of the effort really should be, as I said before, it's about money. It's about, there's a story here. There's a story that we can bang on about. We can not tell the whole story, but we can extract from people through generally guilt money, and we can do that by supporting industry and businesses that profit from less meat. And what are they? Well, they're the Impossible Burgers and what's the Impossible Burgers? The artificial ones and the veggie burgers. They're only doing that. There's no science behind that. They're only doing it because they want to make a whole lot of money. And it's one more thing on this whole greenwashing machine that is being jammed down our throat and making us feel guilty about killing the planet. Yes, there's lots of things that humans are doing that are not at all good for the environment. But I don't believe that methane and eating and just having, this is just having the cows, right? This is just having them on the land. Oh, they're terrible, they're farting and burping. Well, no, they're not. So let's just put that to one side. What are they doing when they are on the land? And why are they farting and burping? It's because they're eating grass. What does that grass do? Well, yes, some turns into fart and burps, but most of it turns into meat. Now, what do we do with that meat? Well, we eat it. And it's the most nutritious source of, nutritious food source on the planet, or various forms of that. So that's a good thing, right? So the more cows we have, the more meat we essentially have to eat. Now, what happens on the plate depends on the person and a whole lot of different things, but let's just agree that it's very nutritious, that food. What else are those cows doing to produce the farts and the burps and the meat? Well, they're eating grass, but what in doing in eating that grass, they're stimulating those roots of those pastures that they're eating to grow, to push out sugars into the root zone, which feeds the microbiology, which enhances the vitality and the health of that soil. I mean, the plants push a bit of sugar out their roots, exudate. The little bacteria and the fungus and whoever else is down there get messages from the plant to go, can you go get me some phosphorus? This beautiful interchange in this communication and symbiosis down there. So what's one of the results of that? Well, there's a whole lot more carbon in the soil that used to be in the atmosphere. So bingo, like plants that are eaten and grazed and done that in a particular way actually is sequestering carbon and taking carbon out of the atmosphere and putting it into the soil. Now, I think we can all agree that's a pretty good thing too. So, when we put all that together, I think it's absolutely ludicrous, and that there are industries and individuals, businesses and so on, all with generally agendas of their own, to let's get rid of cows off the planet. We should have less of them, eat less meat. Well, if you're going to eat less meat, you've got to eat more of something else, and that's probably going to be vegetables, because that's all there is, fruit and veggies, if you get them, take the meat out. Because if you're going to take the meat out, you can't have the dairy. They're subscribing to the idea that you're going to eat mainly plants, to feed the people, to replace the meat in people's diet, to replace that with plants. Most of that food is going to have to be grown in a monoculture situation, intensively, industriously. That has massive consequences environmentally for chemical use, soil degradation, even just farming communities. But the environment, again, getting back to the beginning, no part of the planet should operate without animals. And if it's monoculture, there are no animals, and they kill most of the animals. Those animals might be small little mice and voles and all sorts of things, but you're reducing the biodiversity. I mean, it seems to me it's a clear picture to me. I know I've spent 10 minutes darting all over the place. It's really interesting that those on the other side who say we should get rid of all our cows have got so much momentum on this. And I think it all comes down to guilt. It's like, if you're eating that steak, you're contributing to climate change, killing the planet. It's just the biggest load of bollocks. And people might say, well, you're biased, you're a farmer, you've got cows. And I said, well, yeah, I've got cows. I don't think I'm biased. I actually think I'm pretty objective about it all, because I can't sit here and talk to you about this, Nick, and people listen to it without feeling or knowing or having read or experienced that. I've done a lot of work, interviewed a lot of people. Walter Yaner, if any of your listeners or you want to know more about the methane cycle, Google Walter Yaner, methane. I've got a video that he did with me on it. It's all over the place. He used to work for CSIRO, very credible scientist. He's now retired. He's been at this stuff for decades, and he knows exactly what's going on. And he's not, being paid off by the renewables industry or by Impossible Burger or whoever else to say this sort of stuff. I'm hoping I answered your question there, Nick. It's such an enormous topic, and I just think people, what do? They need to just read a bit, get sort of. It's pretty logical the way these things work. It's very scientific, but it's actually very simple. These cycles of life,
Yeah, and I definitely, when you just do a little bit of research into it again, it starts to be, you start to see the money that's kind of creating this propaganda to make us feel guilty for the natural cycles that we live. And it is. And the way I look at it is that the last form of defense for humanity right now is the farmers, your small-scale farmers. And as soon as they already own majority of the food system. Like the food system's been captured, and that's why we allow super dupers in bloody primary school. These non-foods allowed to be given to children, and these things that are poisoning our population. It's because it's been captured, and it's been captured a long time ago. And there's kind of maybe that 15% resistance from the farmers because they're small scale. But as soon as you monocrop and fully commercialize and fully own everything, like people like your Bill Gates that are trying to buy up all the farmland and put his nonsense products on, that's that total control. And the thing that makes people think clearly and be vital and be healthy is things like your beef and your raw milk and your real food. And that's, if you can take that away and you can give them something like, it's ultimately just trying to sell shit food that's got no nutritional value for a high profit point. That's ultimately what they're trying to do. And, they've created this myth that, no animals die in that process. And as you know and I know, there's much more animals that die in that process. They might be smaller. They might be the birds that die from the poison, or the fish that die in the river from the poison, or the little critters like your native mouses and your native marsupials and reptiles that get killed in the process of poisoning and doing that with the land. And so they've kind of conveniently forgot about all those animals that are dying and just said, but you eating a cow is bad. And
yep.
You can see the propaganda. It is so strong, and you can see it's also heavily funded, but it's got to the point where it's actually quite ridiculous that I'm seeing the pushback in the direction of the regenerative farming and the real food. So it's kind of good. You kind of need to have it so that we can wake up and go, all right, well, these people are trying to control the food system. They actually don't care about us. They just want control. And it's kind of, going to the backbone of most countries, which is the farmers, and the farmers are standing up. And it's quite interesting because you've got these farmers standing up for the next generation of people, but then you also have those same people trying to attack the farmers. And so it's very fascinating to witness that.
Matt Evans has got a great book called On Eating Meat, and in it he talks about it's about eating meat and the topics and the pros and cons and the whole thing. And I love his summarises it really well. One example of what gets killed in the production of things, and he in rice he just quoted that 30,000 ducks are shot every year for the production of rice, right? So because they're eating in the rice paddy and so on. So for those who go, I'm doing the right thing, I'm eating rice and not steak, I'm sort of like generalising here. It's not all beer and Skittles. It's not like you are not having some impact just because you're having a bowl of rice. Ducks were shot to prepare that, or God knows what else. And for those who bang on about you should be getting rid of the cows and so on, we should be eating more, basically plants, full stop. And a lot of effort is put out, and they spend a lot of time, a lot of focus criticising farmers and produce cows and meat and so on. And he made the point in that book that if it's about suffering and animals who are suffering at the hands of humans, and I think we all want to trying to reduce that if we can. And if they are generally wanting to reduce that, then maybe better to focus their efforts on killing feral cats, because more suffering happens in a night in Australia through the paws and the hands and the claws of feral cats with native and non-native species every night, hundreds of thousands. And so if they were really fair dinkum about it, they'd be trying to get rid of feral cats. Yeah, if it's all about get rid of the things that are actually causing damage. But no, they're cute and they're furry and whatever else. And I just that's not actually the thing, right? That's not actually the thing. It's more about, well, there's just again, without going here, it's only more of the genders at play than going, you shouldn't eat that cow, you shouldn't have the cow because it shouldn't be eaten, and because it's going to suffer at the hands of the human when it dies. Well, everything's going to die anyway. Often, certainly in a farming situation, when things die, it's in a very clean, proper facility, and it's very painless and it's very quick, as opposed to just letting an animal die in the paddock and from natural causes. Like, that's actually not a very nice way to die. That animals don't die in hospitals with drips and doctors and nurses around them.
Nah.
If animals die in the paddock, it's because they break a leg. It's because they're at the end of their life and they're old and they can't move. And often they're not quite dead, but foxes come and start gnawing on their ass, or crows come and pick their eyes out. Like, the way the animals die as a result of agriculture generally is very, very clean and humane. So, a big story there. It's a big conversation.
Yeah, and definitely. And then if you think about just the monocultures with the spraying, and then all those animals just go off and die from the neurological stuff that's happened because they've come in contact with the spray. And, that's not a pretty death. And, it's something that, one of the other things that I always find interesting that they kind of ignore is the food miles. Like things are traveled all across the world, whereas if you're getting meat from a very close local source or even vegetables from a local source, then the food miles, like animals die on the way because it's traveled halfway across the world. So that's one of the other conversations is we've got such incredible food in Australia, but we import food from across the world. And to me, that's madness. And then, you add on top of that all these factories that are needed to produce all these non-foods, as we call, the Czech Institute, we call them the SAD diet, the standard American or the standard Australian diet. And that's why people are so sick, is because we've gone away from, it's almost like we've put our blinkers on and go, we don't want things to die, or we don't want to be involved in that process, so we're going to remove ourselves from it. But in that process, more things die, including a whole generation of humans that are chronically ill because we have disconnected ourselves from food. And so, first of all, I wanted to thank you for being a farmer that's actually on the land and doing the stuff, but also that you're sharing your story and inspiring others to, not afraid to kind of tell the truth a little bit and to stand up for, what I believe is right. And the more I see that, the more people get back on the land and the more communities that are built, then we're very resilient as a species. The more isolated and disconnected from our food we are. Like, could you imagine being in somewhere like Melbourne or Sydney and their, Woolworths didn't have any food, Woolies or Coles didn't have any food in there? Like, what are you going to do? There's nothing around you. You're so far removed from, that's why you see people riding over toilet paper and things like that, because they don't have any resources close to them. And we're in the kind of communities, like, I live in the hinterland. You can see the resilience. It's noticeable. You can trust people. You know that there's people that could help you. You could ask for help. And it makes you feel very, I guess, there's a deep level of safety and security kind of in your soul when you live on the land, because you know that you'll be provided for.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, nature's a great provider, and we as farmers have a responsibility to look after it. We're producing food for people, providing, a playground for people, and that is builds resilience. And you can't produce nutritious food in an environment that's not resilient and not healthy itself. That's a fact.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, so we'll make sure that, what's your website for everyone that wants to get on over?
charliearnott.com.au. Pretty straightforward. I'm on Instagram, CharlieArnott1.
And that's double T, yeah?
Double T, yes.
Yep.
And there's an events page there. I do different things in the world, but one of them is my podcast, Regenerative Journey. There's links to that there. We've also got a little Airbnb just down the road from us called Little Plains. There's a link on there on my website if you want to come and stay in that house and check it out, see a bit of what we do. And we've got a biodynamic workshop for 2 days up at Melania, the 16th and 17th of October, and we're also helping to organise a HM, Holistic Management course with Brian Warburg here starting in October. It's based in Burrawa, and come to Hanamino for a part of it for a bit of practice sort of stuff. Everything else on the website there. But look, I really enjoyed having the chat, Nick. It's been great. Thanks for having me.
Beautiful. And I'd highly recommend heading along to the workshop. I've been there, and it was a real eye opener for me. And there's a photo of me. I did the manure pit like after the course, and so I had my hands in this shit, and I was just loving it. And there's another time I remember spraying out I was walking on the full moon, putting out the biodynamic preps on the land as well. And it's a really great course because there was kind of newer people like me that didn't really have much experience, and there was people that were generational farmers that were wanting to put new practices into their land and to their business as well. So, and it kind of catered for everyone. It was really well explained, and I really, really enjoyed it. So definitely head along and check out Charlie's podcast and his website for other courses in the future. And thank you very much for coming along, and I'm sure I'll be hearing from you and seeing you at some point in the future. Thanks for being you, mate.
Thank you for sharing my story and other people's stories and your contribution to the world as well. It's awesome.
Beautiful. Cheers, mate.